be his enemies are under his reign and authority. And he can snuff them out anytime he wants. And in 2 Thessalonians, when it's talking about the second coming of Christ, Paul talks about God withdrawing the restraining power of the Holy Spirit from around the globe. The Holy Spirit is the one who right now is actively preventing things from getting as bad as they could get. You know, we watch the news and these people make us think like, oh my gosh, we're not waking up tomorrow morning. But God, the Ark of the Covenant, represents the Lord of the earth. And when the soles of the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand in one heap. Now at this point, I would ask you to pray for your spiritual leaders here at the Shannon Press. Because the spiritual leaders here are just like the Levites of here at the bank of the Jordan. You know, spiritual leaders are given spiritual gifts, and they've been called apart. They've been consecrated for the work of leadership. But spiritual leaders are people that get tired. Spiritual leaders are people who come under spiritual attack, who can be worn down, who can have questions and doubts, and so on. I just looked at the clock in the community. But I want you to pray for your spiritual leaders, because just like these priests were probably shaken a little bit, looking at this Jordan and knowing they have to go down into it, sometimes our circumstances can make things difficult for our spiritual leaders. So pray for them. Pray for them daily. Pray for them daily for God's strength and protection and blessing. I need to move quickly. And as soon as those bearing the ark had come as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the brink of the water. Now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout this time of harvest. The waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarephath. That city is about 19 miles north of where they were crossing the Jordan. And an interesting historical fact is that the Jordan waters have stopped flowing, backed up 2 times in history since then. We don't know why. If it was an earthquake, there's not enough in the historical record. But 2 other times, in about 1300 and then around 1927, the waters of the Jordan stopped flowing and were backed up in Adam. Just an interesting fact. Now the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel was passing over on dry ground until all the nation finished passing over the Jordan River. Now, here are the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant. I'm sure somewhere in Exodus we've learned how heavy it is. I forgot. I didn't think to look it up, to be honest with you. But it was big. It was big, made out of heavy wood with gold leaf, and it had all kinds of stuff. It was heavy. And these priests are in the middle of the Jordan River on dry ground, fortunately, right? But they're holding this thing up while 2.5 million people cross. And it doesn't tell us anywhere in here how long it took them to cross. But the priests knew their responsibility and they carried it out. So I don't know if they took turns 4 at a time holding it, or if they all held it. It doesn't tell us how they did that, but they stood there and waited for all the people to pass. When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man, and command them, saying, 'Take 12 stones from here, out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight.'" Now here's the horny toad that I would have used with the kids. But these, I'm sorry, you probably won't be able to see these. These are the 12, no. Kind of like Jimmy Fallon on the table. We just happen to have. But God told Joshua to tell the people to bring forth one man from each tribe and to go back into the river that they just crossed. The priests are still standing there, and that's why the water hasn't started flowing yet. And pick up 12 stones. Now later on in the passage, it suggests that these were probably pretty hefty stones because they would pick them up and put them on their shoulders. And unlike me in the 21st century, these were all probably pretty stout men that could have maybe a stone 3 times, 4 times the weight of a stone that I could lift. And then further down it says that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in time to come, "What do these stones mean to you?" You shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off from the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. Now jumping to the head to the end of chapter 4, where the key information comes together. The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped at Gilgal. Gilgal was a small settlement northeast of Jericho. And as best I could tell, it's about an 8 or 10 mile walk west of the Jordan where they crossed. I imagine, well, I don't know, I can't imagine, because it doesn't say. So the people came up out of the Jordan, and those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. I'm sorry, but you can hear me. So where are we at? I should have counted. There were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. And he said to the people of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in times to come. Now this is more specific. Earlier it said, when your children ask, and you shall tell them, when your children ask in time to come, that's just kind of a general sometime in the future. Here it's implying that our children will ask over and over again. And so we'll have more than one opportunity. It almost points to kind of parenting and teaching and raising up and nurturing our youth to become godly men and women. And he said to the people of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in times to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know Israel passed over the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you, personal you, for the actual people that crossed. He says you. It's a personal or second person plural in the Hebrew. Dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over. So Joshua was making a connection here of what's just happened with the crossing of the Red Sea and God's power being displayed in both those events, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. Now, one, that the peoples of the earth may know the Lord your God is mighty. You know, it's interesting, even in like chapter 1 or 2, chapter 2, where Rahab hides the spies, Joshua sends 2 men over to kind of check things out a little bit. This is separate from when Moses sent the spies over. And Rahab says, oh my gosh, all of us have been watching and know and have been hearing about your mighty God and how he has defeated all kinds of armies. Already, before they've even crossed the Jordan, the word has spread. And so the peoples of the earth have already begun learning, and they're going to learn even more once they witness this parting of the Jordan. So that all the peoples of the earth may know the hand of the Lord is mighty, and that you may fear the Lord your God forever. Now, in this context, in the Hebrew, fear does not mean to quake in our boots, to be afraid of, here it means that we would fear God in such a way that we would want to be loyal to him, that we would be loyal to God in following him and obeying him and so on. So, do I have a pithy little conclusion? No, but this is an awesome story from the Bible. We believe that all the Bible is inspired by God. These stories are actual stories. There are historical accounts from other traditions that support some, not all yet, but some of what I've read this morning. So this is real stuff that we can hang our hat on, as my grandpa used to say. And I want to encourage us about the importance of remembering. Last week, Todd exhorted us about reaching forward. I'm forgetting what the exact word is, but that straining forward for the goal that is set before us and keeping our eye focused on that. And yet there is a role for remembering, just like we read here, and just like we will acknowledge in a few minutes as we come to the Lord's table. So let's take the next few minutes to sing and prepare our hearts while the servers come forward.